Pretty good having you here, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's always St. Croix Rod Factory. This is the largest factory in the country. This is our U.S. We call it St. Croix North. It's the largest rod manufacturing facility in the country, and we're coming up on our 75th anniversary. This building right here that we're going to tour. For 72 years we've been here. Wow. So it's kind of cool. We're just going to go through, but I figured what I'd do. Victory's been smoking for us.
I mean, yeah, it's my favorite line in the St. Croix family. So you want to show me how you make one of these things?
Let's take it from cradle to grave, and it's going to start with obviously a lot of R&D. You know, we're talking to anglers like you and anglers out there trying to stay on top of trends. But what's cool is we've got a new technology. Specifically the way we're blending carbon fibers together, I'm going to get into. This series has 25 models, but it's like a custom rod series. So let's go look at it.
Yeah, let's go check it out.
Check it out. It's where it all starts. It's like it's a huge capital investment for us, but the mandrel, it's funny because what a lot of people don't realize, I mean, this baby's hollow, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, how does it get that way? So it's kind of like the foundation of a home. I mean, every single rod that St. Croix makes has its own mandrel. If it's a two-piece, it's gonna have two of them. Okay. This obviously has a mandrel specifically designed for itself, but what St. Croix did is this IPC. Yep. It's really foundational. It's an exclusive mandrel technology that we're using. It's called integrated polycurve, right? To not get too weedy with you, basically if you look at one of these mandrels, these are done on a center grinder out of carbon steel, and the IPC technology smooths that thing out. So instead of having little tapers in it going down, this material has to be rolled over it, that I'll show you in a second. Yeah. It's a smooth, curved, smooth mandrel, and what it does, like, you know, I mean, drop shot, jerk bait, anytime we want that thing to bend the way it does, when we're talking about working with carbon fibers of high strain rate, when you can roll them over a technologically advanced mandrel, it's amazing.
So this is where the action of the rod's born, depending on the taper of it?
Yeah, it's part of it. Action comes with partially the mandrel, but also a bigger part of it, I would say, is materials and pattern layups, and I'm going to show you that. There's rods that we have multiple materials in one design, and that's what really makes the way that thing bends.
The extreme action. Because I mean, that's what St. Croix is known for, is exaggerating those actions. Extra fast is really extra fast. Fast action is truly fast action. So there's multiple steps in that process to get that action out of that rod.
Well, more specifically than that, Victory's got 25 models. Every single one of them has a different pattern layup in it. So it's like a custom rod series. So people pick that thing up, they put 10-pound fluoro on a jerkbait rod, and they throw it out and they go, man, this is right? Well, there's a reason why it's right.
Gotcha.
Because we're not copy paste doing the same thing on every model. So it all starts with the mandrel. It's something a lot of people don't talk about, but we put a lot of importance behind it. Really, it's where it starts. Let's keep rolling. I'm going to show you now an area out here that's really cool. This is called blank fabrication. So look, you got a material here and a material here. We've got some that have a lot more than that. So it's not as simple. And it's funny, we hear all the time like, well, I bought a graphite fishing rod.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it, because you can have a material linear from butt to tip, then you got another one that stops to here, and then you got a reinforcing fiber that's laid up. There's a lot going on. What we try to do, try to look at what we want the rod to do, what bait you're throwing on it, how we want that thing to pin fish up and bend, but we have the capability to do it because it's really handcrafted all the way down to the mandrel design is important. This is equally as important, because if we get this wrong, it's not going to bend the way we want it to bend.
Makes sense, makes sense. I can't believe this much materials in one rod.
Well, you'd have this one, and then you have this one. This is one model, but we're building a whole bunch of them. Okay, so that's one example there, but these are all laid out oftentimes with multiple materials. Look at this little sliver right here.
Yeah.
So it's all thought out on the front side. You know, the customer doesn't see that. You're out in your boat looking at 20 rods on your deck, and you kind of think, well, these things are all put together the same. No. Yeah, way different. So the material itself, I'll show you something kind of cool. We have to keep this refrigerated. Yeah, it's cold. So what this is, and what a lot of people don't understand on rods, is they're not like 100% graphite, all right?
Yeah.
It's actually a material called prepreg, and it's three things. You've got your primary material, which oftentimes is carbon fiber. Could be glass though, right?
Okay.
And then you've got your scrim, which gives it its strength. Then you've got resin.
All right.
And those three are all together, and we have to keep it cold before we use it. So it holds its integrity better back here, and we can cut it, all those things. Now, obviously, it's gonna come back out here and get in room temperature.
Yeah.
And we're gonna cut it to different patterns, and I'll show you how we roll it up, and then we put it on the rolling machine, and we tape it, and I tell you what, by the time this is over, you're gonna be fishing that thing, and you're gonna have no idea. There's 32 sets of hands that touch every one of these before it hits your boat.
32 different people touch these rods.
You're gonna see every step.
Wow.
So this right here, this is a pattern cutting machine.
Okay.
So obviously you can see one word we throw around lots, consistency, right? So what he's doing, he's gonna be cutting out all these patterns so they're gonna be absolutely identical, right? Because if, let's say you buy a 6.8 MXF jerkbait rod, you absolutely love it. Next year you wanna come in and buy another one, you want it to, you know how important that is for that thing to be the same? I mean, why does that matter?
It matters because you want to duplicate the success you had previously. I want that action to be exactly the same.
I mean, you pick that thing up and you throw it in a cast a little bit different, that bait tumbles, or it doesn't work the cadence of the bait right.
It doesn't keep the fish pinned up all the time.
So and you got to imagine every single model of rod that ever comes through this factory is done this way, and there's still to this day some of them cut with hand cutters. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'll take that.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be a lot more consistent, and it's going to give us a chance, if we design something, to have it come out the way we need it, because our goal is to make Pete better.
Nice.
That's it.
Right on.
Not
Well,
rocket science.
Exactly.
So what we're doing now is, you can see these mandrels are being heated, and you also see they're getting tacked. Okay, so in other words, there's a sticky material over them, and they're getting heated, because what we're going to do over here at this section is, you see the patterns that are laid out here. These are all predetermined, and what he's going to do, he's going to lay that just right on the edge of the mandrel, but he's going to heat that thing up real quick with that gun. Bill, how long have you been doing this? How long? 32 years. And I tell you what, we could tell this story throughout this factory. We actually did a marketing campaign called Meet Our Machinery. We got a poster of Bill. And if you read the statement that he makes under that thing, it's like these folks care so much about what they do. You watch every little step, and the passion they put towards what they do is pretty cool. You know, and I tell you what, you try to do a lot of these steps, like if you or I were to try to do it, probably end up in scrap.
Yeah, I'm glad he's doing it, not me.
So after the blank is set up on the material, it comes over to this machine, and what happens is a blank gets put in, and this whole machine's gonna come down, and it's gonna roll that material over that mandrel. So the mandrel's still in it, right? But the material's rolled over it. So obviously this is critically important too. Getting the right pressure on that, having it done consistently.
Boy, that's fast and efficient.
We're not even out of blank fab yet. There's more rooms I've got to show you yet, but this is how this whole thing comes together. So at some point, we've got the mandrel in the blank now, right? We've got to get this thing heated to cure. So it's got to go in an oven. So one stage that we do is we're going to put tape on this blank all the way down the blank, and what that tape does is, when it goes in the oven, it just holds everything together and everything cures the right way. So now we've got all the R&D work's done back there, right? We've got the mandrel hopefully done the right way, right? It's a constant learning process. I mean, we lean on anglers and feedback and all these things. Gets to the point where we get the pattern set up right, gets cut on the computer pattern cutting machine. And then the mandrel actually gets rolled up with the material, comes over here, and it gets taped. Now it's ready to go to curing, and I'll show you that.
Thank you.
Take your finger and rub it down there. Feel that zip, zip, zip. Those are tape edges.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what that is, and that's
Is
because
the tape
that.
still on there right now?
Yeah, so basically the tape's on there. Now, obviously, we're going to remove that, and I'll show it to you, but it's an important part of the process that a fisherman had never seen.
Yeah, no. I didn't even know you did that.
Yep. So these ovens, what that rod does now is it comes from back here, and it gets cured. And it gets cured for a certain amount of time, and not only time, St. Croix figured out a few years ago to crescendo that time, to not just put it in one constant temperature. So the temperature actually crescendos to a peak and decrescendos off that peak, and what it does, I'll get a little geeky with you, but it reduces something called microbuckling. Imagine if you were a certain temperature and you stepped into another extreme temperature, you kind of freak out, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like taking a bunch of goldfish in a bag and letting them acclimate
Gotcha.
before you just throw them in there.
Makes sense.
Right? Those fibers, when we put them in extreme heat, we've proven, and you couldn't see it on a finished rod, but they actually do what's called microbuckling. They kind of freak out. Sometimes they can lose their integrity. This new oven system increased our blank strength by 33%.
Wow. Holy cow. That's crazy.
They only let me say so much.
I bet.
Right?
I bet you there's some secrets in there, yeah.
So now what we got to do is we got to come over here and we got to get this tape off, right? We had that tape on back there, and you can feel those ridges,
Yep.
right? So we got to get this tape off. So this is the kind of thing that we obviously built. And watch what we're going to do. It's going to get a little bit loud. This is a stage that doesn't get talked about much, right? Remember back there, I had you feel those little ridges?
The ridges from the tape,
right?
yeah.
And after she takes that tape off, the tape's gone,
Okay.
but you're still gonna have those ridges.
Oh,
So that's what this wet sander's for, and this is critical. This belt has to be changed out, needs to be set at the right pressure, and they run these things through, and it takes these people, these are experts that man this machine. If you imagine over sanding or under sanding.
I can imagine. It's
What
pretty
would
critical.
you think, what would your guess be if you over sanded or under sanded?
Well, I would think if you over sanded it, you'd create a weakness in the blank somewhere. But I would think if you under sanded it, probably would make the action off.
100%. No, it's all about, you nailed that. It's all about consistency. So if you over sand it, you damage its structural integrity, right? But if you under sand it, it absolutely affects the action of the rod and even the power of the rod. You have more material. So let's say you did a batch of 30 Victory 7.2 MHMs and they weren't all sanded the same, they're not going to bend the same. It's going to be close, but as good as you are, honestly, you'd notice the difference.
Really?
So it's important to do this step consistently. It's extremely important.
What's next?
Obviously, this looks like a surgery room for a reason. I mean, it's all masked off, it's temperature controlled, it's dust controlled. This is where they get painted.
Okay.
Right? And to this day, we still take a lot of rods. Obviously, they won't have guides on them at this point, but we'll dip squeegee is one way we do it.
Okay.
And another way we do it is the spray. And you can see down that back booth that has the foam behind it. And there's certain rods we spray, and there's certain rods we still dip squeegee to this day. But you can see it's very closely managed. We don't want alien foreign particles falling on these blanks and having them show up and all that. So this is it's funny, this factory is like, it's like the Millennium Falcon. There's like building here and Project X and all this stuff going on, but there's a method to the madness behind everything. Some rooms are like really, really controlled on the atmosphere side, and paint's certainly one of them.
It's a really cool process.
Bring your car in here.
Yeah,
Huh?
I need to.
We'll do some SoCal look on it. A lot goes on in here. This is engineer and design, so we've, all kinds of blue sky mad scientist stuff going on. I mean, look at this. Look at the shards of carbon fiber in the ceiling up there in the foam.
Really?
Those are from rods that blew up in our dynamic analyzer.
Okay.
That basically flexes a rod 10,000 times, right?
Yeah.
And we can break anything we want because you just increase the angle and the load on it, it's going to blow up. But I mean, what we don't want to do is have somebody take a rod out and have a whole bunch of them blow up and us coming back saying, man, why didn't we do this or why didn't we do that? Are we perfect? No. But a machine like this and a testing process like this, I mean, you can imagine how loud that must have sounded like for those things to be sticking up there. Yeah, it's like a improved cylinder shotgun going off. But this computer program that we use is called SolidWorks.
Yeah.
So we talked about the manual, but even before that, we can basically build the layup of a rod before it's even hits the manufacturing floor. It's all done back here first, right? So if we want to design a rod for a 10XD or whatever, we want it to be 7'11" and bend a little bit moderately, but have enough horsepower we can throw it a mile and all the things an angler would want. We know with inside diameters and materials and pattern layups, a lot on the front side can be done. Imagine what that saves you, because otherwise it's like, let's try this, and that didn't work.
Yeah, that whole process gets interrupted if you got it wrong. So yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool how the whole thing comes together. But this is where a lot of the, and there's things back here I probably couldn't even show you. Actually, you see a couple of them I'd probably not want to talk about yet, because we're working like years out, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the crazy stuff happens. You know, they'll bring our product team something. Man, what do you think? A lot of blue sky stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and these folks have been doing this for a long time.
Well, once the camera's turned off, you have to take me on a private tour.
Exactly. Two big things go on back here. You saw the paint room back there, right? It's one thing to get it painted. It's a whole other thing to inspect it so it passes inspection, right? So those rods are going to come back. You can see them coming back on that wheel, right? And she's got to sign off on these things, right? So they've got to meet consistency and our specifications. If it's not right, no kidding, right? And then this is kind of cool. This is called a blank profiler. And so what happens, we can basically set a rod up and bend it, and we know it's kind of a spot check. Let's say we're building 107 2 MHMs, and we know, because this is a moderate, we want this rod to bend a little back further in the blank. Let's say we're throwing a square bill or a chatterbait on braid or whatever. We don't want it super fast here. So if we're building 50 of these, we can put one on here during the manufacturing process and check it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Make sure it meets our specifications before it goes any further.
That's awesome.
You know, you can see at a lot of these stages, any hiccup,
That's what amazes me. It's all got to be perfect and QC through the whole process. That's wild. It's cool to watch.
any little hiccup changes the whole thing. We'd rather catch it now.
Yeah, for sure.
Now it could end up in your rod locker and we could probably care less, but the average person, right?
Yeah, the average.
So we're taking this baby from the cradle to the grave, right?
Yeah.
Now we're gonna walk across some snow and we're gonna go into another building. We're gonna get into handle assembly.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm gonna show you our machine shop real quick because there's some really cool things that go on back there. Like if we get something that breaks down or whatever it is, we got guys right back here who can fix it. There was years ago when I brought my boat trailer up here and something went out on my brakes. I limped into the parking lot. This is when I was a rookie, like 25 years ago. They made a part to fix my boat trailer and then made another one and replaced it on the other side. He said, we just replaced one that's better than what the manufacturer did for you. I drove it all the way back to Iowa.
That's awesome.
I'll show you that room.
Yeah.
So you can see right away the whole environment changes, right? It's not as loud. You're seeing a lot more, very much attention to detail. And as I walk you around some of these stages, you're gonna see, I mean, the rubber kind of hits the road. Back there, that was called blank fabrication, right? So that was the construction of the blank. Got down to that finished product that you'd see right here,
Yep.
except the guides and the handle and the decal. That's where we're at. So now we're on this side. This is our specific sizing room. You can imagine all of the hundreds of different rod bottles we make. You've got different blank diameters, right?
Yeah.
So different blank diameters are gonna mean different inside diameters and different handle sizes. So all these things, the consistency of it and the sizing, and years and years and years ago, we didn't have this near to this level. Now it's got its own separate room, and we put high importance into it. The handle's obviously extremely important, but what's equally as important is the consistency of the models within a series to be dead on with each other. And the only way we feel we have a chance to do that is to put attention to that one specific area.
Is that pretty unique to St. Croix? I feel like a lot of other rods that I've seen when you get in that handle, have like newspaper and things like that kind of jammed in there to get the blank.
Well, this is more handle sizing. I'll get into that. You're talking about a shim?
Yeah.
I'll show you something to blow your mind.
Okay.
Back in shims, and that's what you're talking about. Matter of fact, I'll take you to it now because it's right on the way to where we're going before. It's funny, if you look at rods, you look at fishing rods, and you look at, in a lot of cases, you'll look at the blank diameter, right? Then you look at the size of the reel seat barrel. They don't match, so you got to have something to take up that space.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What's blown my mind, I actually have rods at home in my office that I've had zipped down, and I've seen cardboard, masking tape, and newspaper. St. Croix is using a urethane shim that's done on a CNC lathe.
Okay.
So this stuff hydrophobic, water doesn't like it, right? It's done on a machine that manufactures down to the tolerances of a human hair.
Wow.
Right? And this is gonna last forever. And you can also see it weighs nothing.
Yeah.
So it improves sensitivity. It improves the durability of the handle. We actually started that in the industry.
Really?
It comes on these big blocks, and there's a couple different gauges we use on it, depending on the series of the rod, but this is where it starts. And that's the finished product, and you can see there's all kinds of different ones because, as we just spoke to, the handles are different.
Yeah.
So that's our urethane shim technology. It's really cool.
That's wild.
I mean, don't weigh anything.
Yeah.
A lot
It weighs just as much as newspaper and masking tape, but it's 10 times more durable.
Yeah. And again, that's not, it's not necessarily a bad thing what a lot of other people do, because obviously it's worked for decades and decades, and that's fine, but we just have our ways of doing it, and we feel this is the best way we've found so far to do it. So a lot of our, you look at little trim pieces on rods, and we make these in-house.
Yeah.
So whether they're aluminum or whether they're Delrin or whatever they are, these are all CNC lathes back here, but also these guys have the capability to fix like anything in our factory that goes down, whether it can be something in the offices, if it's somebody's desk wants to be fixed or whatever, but most importantly, any of the machines that we're building these rods on, they can come back here and do it right here. So we don't have to outsource that. So you imagine the lead times and getting stuff done quicker so we can get them to you guys.
Yep.
This is a huge part of it. So when we talk about handle assembly and I talk about attention to detail,
Yeah.
I mean, this is where it really gets important in terms of consistency, repetition. And this is the new Legend Tournament bass,
Yeah.
right? So you can see multiple pieces going on together and everything's done. And she's gonna do this with great attention to detail. Another thing we've tried to do, one thing I've seen that's improved a lot over the years is a lot of reduction in waste in materials. I mean, these little apertures and dispensers, and I remember coming up here years and years ago and you'd have a big pile of something. Yeah. So it's one thing about this tour, Pete, every time I do it, something changes. Right? I'll come up and there'll be some new stage, and sometimes I don't even know about it till I get here. I'm doing a tour and I'm like, whoa, what's that? And I have to go ahead. But it's a constant work in progress to try to get this victory to your boat. I mean, that's what it is. It's at every single step.
Is that the process I've heard it called finding the spine of the rod?
No, it's not. That's a great question. So the spine in a rod is basically what happens anytime you roll something over a mandrel. You got to have an edge. Okay. Think about it. I mean, the edge has to stop somewhere, right? Yeah. So what'll happen is, and you can notice it, you can actually test a spine in a rod. If you overload it, you'll feel it kind of go ka-thump, ka-thump. I can feel it right there, ka-thump, right? So what we've found though is you've got to get the rod to huge load to hit the spine. Okay, so in our boat rods and certain salt stuff, we'll do that. We'll roll the guides consistent with the spine. But on bass rods and a lot of other things, the straight edge doesn't necessarily correspond with the spine. So what we do is we find the straight edge because we know it doesn't have to get to that max load to find it. So we'd rather find the straight edge for overall fishability better. So that's what we're doing. We're using a laser to find the straight edge of the blank. We don't spline every single rod we build. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes tons of sense.
Yeah. So this machine here, this is cool. This is the first machine our engineer ever designed.
This one?
Yeah, when he came to work here. I mean, he started just before I did.
Yeah.
So he's probably 27 years or whatever. But what this does, again, I'll use that word consistency again. What she's doing is she's hitting this with a pen that shows up under a black light.
Okay.
And you can see all these rods are set up at the tip. So all these, the guide spacing is going to be critical. Why would it, let me ask you, why would that matter if the guides were located on a rod in the same place?
Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of factors that probably also attributes to the action of the rod, keeping the line off the blank. No, does it probably helps twisting of the blank? There's probably several different reasons why you'd want to make sure your guide spacing is exactly the same.
Action is really important. It absolutely affects the action. You got to imagine, anytime a guide is on a rod, these are single foots, but you got thread wraps there. You get down here into a double foot, you got 2 pieces of thread wrap here. So if these are off a little bit, it can change the overall stiffness and deflection of the blank.
It can change the stiffness?
A little bit, especially action, and it can matter. And and it's amazing because you wouldn't realize it till you start fishing it. But if we rolled one up that was really whacked compared to this, you'd really notice it. Plus, imagine going at, you guys, all the rods that you're sending to your anglers. Let's say they get 3 of them, and they put them in their rod rack in their garage, and they look and the guides are off a 1/4 inch or whatever. I mean, it is what it is. You could still fish it, but we don't want that.
No, I get it.
So again, it's all about trying to get things as close as we possibly can. So that she's got those things set very consistently all the way through. Okay?
Yeah.
Huge part of our business. The vast majority of rods that are done here go to people's homes. And they're wound at home.
Oh, at their house.
In their house.
Yeah.
Then they come back, then we put a laser on them, make sure they're straight, then we finish set them.
Okay.
So this is talk about something that's easy to mess up.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first started here, I tried to do that, and it was don't laugh, she's laughing, and you deserve to laugh, I get it. I mean, these folks are so good at this. How long did it take you to get really good at this, honestly? I mean,
I think I started about
30 years. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, honestly. And you try to do that. One of these days we're going to light you up on camera, have you wind a rod, and you'll have one messed up by the time she does the whole thing. It's absolutely incredible.
Jacob's getting that rod.
It's one of those things that you just take the angler takes for granted.
Yeah, for sure.
But these are, talk about craftsmanship. I mean, they do a great job. And it's all about how that thing looks at the end,
Perfect.
So here you go, man. Largest in the U.S. Here we are. So these rods have been wound now, right?
Yeah.
And they're all ready to go. The guides that they've been taken home, they've been put on, they come back here. But the fact they're not finished yet, we can still move them just a little bit. So what we do is we get them back here, and we'll put a laser on it one more time to check the straightness of it.
Okay.
Make sure these are dead straight. Then they get set, and they go on these big drying wheels. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna zoom up on somebody doing one of these and watch how she does this. It's really cool. I mean, she's gonna make it look a lot easier than it is. This is another thing I tried to do too, but take a look at that. It's called flex coat.
Flex coat?
And these have to turn 24 hours a day. Because if they don't, one thing about this material is we're not gonna cut any corners of what we use here. So if these things aren't turning all the time, they can kind of settle in and form a little bulge, and that's why you'll see these things spinning.
That's this whole process to stop that flex coat from piling
Sets it
up.
evenly. It just goes round, around, around, around. Doesn't give it a chance to cheat on one side or the other. It's just an even set. Yep. And then we go over here. This is decal application. So here's another laser.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, does that thing have to be absolutely dead perfect? Could we eye it? Probably. You know, but that's going to be, well, you probably could, but I promise you Pete and I could.
Yeah, it would be
to get them to look look that good. But you know what? One thing I always like to say about this stage is this is kind of the stamp of approval, right? This is where the brand goes on the rod. So this is a part that we take a lot of pride in. I mean, if it gets to this level, passes final inspection, it's deserving of going in that rod bag, going Omnia, and going to your anger. You follow me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
This is where it's marked as St. Croix.
exactly.
St. Croix.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Every single stage. So we've taken this victory from cradle to grave.
Yeah.
And this thing's gonna go through final inspection. Somebody's gonna look at it, do a quick look, check some things. It's gonna go in that bag and off to you guys. But I mean, what's your high-level comments after touring it? I mean, is it more than you thought?
It is. I'm impressed. I always knew the rods were made in the U.S., knew they're made in Park Falls, but when you actually physically see the attention to detail and all the steps it takes to manufacture just one of these rods, it makes me excited to get out next year when this ice finally melts and get a victory out on the water and get to remember this tour that you gave me. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Victory's been a victory. You know, this thing spawned out of COVID.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we were shut down, right? Mm-hmm. So the name of the series is kind of indicative of survival. And let's get through this and let's come up with a winner. And it happened to, you know, we're just thankful that people are loving it. I mean, it's been great on the water. We're getting a lot of great feedback.
Yeah, I bet you are. The rods are incredible, and they're made in the U.S. right here in Park Falls. Can't ask for anything more.
Appreciate you, Pete. Thanks
you.
for going on the tour with us.
Appreciate you having me.
All right, man.
Take care, everyone. Go catch it.